Thanks very much. I was thrown a little bit by the R on your jacket when you said you were in Saskatoon. I thought somebody was playing a trick. You didn't even know that was there, did you?
I lost a bet.
Oh, there you go. Hey, he kind of put a lot of emphasis on the time. 25 years with the RCMP. That's not that long. My boss was 40, and 29 years married. I bet you there are people here that have been married that long. Not the longest guy in the province. Yeah, the same lady. She's put up with me for that long. Anybody here from Edenwald or Martinsville or Warman? The 4% growth amateurs. So, welcome. That's the only funny bit. The rest of it's dry, so get out your pillow. Ministry of Justice, Policing and Community Safety Services, Program Manager. I have about 8 programs that I manage. The CSO program right now is the biggest of those programs. One of the other one that is in the news a lot, but is really SGI's program, not mine. I just sit on their committee, is the automated speed enforcement, so the fixed site photo laser. That's another of my programs that's getting in the news a little bit lately. So when I was with the RCMP, my last 5 years with the RCMP, I actually was in a position called a contract analyst. And so what I dealt with was the provincial and municipal police service agreements. And with the RCMP, we talked a lot about alternative enforcement options. What can we do that isn't strictly the police to help communities address their local problems, help them address their local priorities? And then the province and SUMA and SARM were talking about the same stuff. So we needed to find a better, more responsive model for local enforcement priorities. We recognized, even at the RCMP, that we weren't as responsive as we could have been to local priorities. And so this was first conceived in about 2007 with the 2 pilot sites of Rosetown and the district of Lakeland coming on stream in 2008 and 2009, respectively. And an evaluation was done on the pilot sites, but no action was taken on that evaluation. It didn't go anywhere. The last group I told as well that it was basically my boss was the only person in the office. So he had 20-odd programs, not just the 8 that I have. So there just wasn't any capacity to deal with it. And it wasn't an enormous priority. There wasn't a whole lot of you beating down the door to say we need this. But that changed as time went on. And in about 2011, at the urging of SUMA and SARM, we created a working group. The province did. I say we because I was on it as a RCMP representative at the time, and that's why I've been on it and involved in it since it became a huge topic. And we gathered a lot of partners together. Some days that meeting was huge. There were 20-odd people in the room, more than that. But most days there was the RCMP, there was the Ministry of Justice, a couple of people. There was SUMA and SARM with 2 or 3 each. Saskatchewan Association of Chiefs of Police was there regularly. The Police Federation was there from time to time. Various other ministries participated. Keith Comstock came to one of our meetings. That's probably a name you're familiar with from government relations. And so with guidance from the partners, the committee started to write a policy, started to have an idea of what we wanted to do. But we got a little bit bogged down. We got bogged down in the details, and we didn't really have a clear vision, and we didn't really have a clear mandate. And I'll say this again, too, it really boils down to we didn't have a name. And one day, the Deputy Minister of Corrections and Policing said, make it happen. He came in the room, came to our meeting, with very little notice or warning, so we couldn't even wear our bulletproof vest before he got there. We thought we were in a lot of trouble. I wouldn't even work for the province then. I still worked for the feds then. But you've all met Dale McPhee or heard him speak, or some of you have at least, and he fills a room regardless of how big that room is. So you can imagine he comes into your meeting room, he fills her up pretty hard. And he said, make it happen, call it a community safety officer program, here's some vision, here's some strategic priorities, get to work. And so we did. And so we officially started there in 2013, really. We'd talked a lot before that for a little better than a year, but we really didn't get anywhere. And we got somewhere after Dale came and told us to get busy. So what it is, the CSO program, is high priority. That's your high priority. Low risk for harm enforcement services. Okay? So it's important to the community, but you don't really need the police to enforce it. A lot like bylaw enforcement. Every decision about duties must include some form of a risk assessment. And that's on the individual CSO's part, on you as employers, on whoever's acting as the chief of police in those terms, whoever's directing them day to day in your municipalities needs to keep in mind that it's low risk for harm. We're not going to put them in harm's way. And we're going to make our appointments such that they'd have to work really hard to put themselves in harm's way if they tried. They'd have to get outside their mandate in order to do that. CS arms are armed only with defensive items: wisdom, OC spray, and a baton. Okay? Wisdom being the first, the foremost, the biggest, the strongest, the best one they've got, best tool in the box. I mentioned to one of my offline conversations that we're not really recruiting so far 25-year-olds. That's not who's interested in the program as CSOs. Their second career, their supplemental career, they're retired police officers in some regards. So they come with a little bit more of that wisdom, a little bit more of that ability. Common sense is anything but common, and it's really a learned behavior. So as we get older, we generate more common sense, or at least we delude ourselves into believing that we do. Where are we now? The policy's in the final draft version. It has been for some time now. It just needs some sign-off, a couple of little spelling mistakes. We don't want to send a policy out with from instead of form. That's bad. The training package is complete, so we've gone to the extent of hiring a consultant to help us write the training package. His name's Cal Corley. Cal was an assistant commissioner with the RCMP. His last posting with the RCMP was as the executive director of the Canadian Police College in Ottawa. So he is eminently qualified to help us write a curriculum for this type of a program. He studied programs from all across Canada, particularly Alberta. We really ripped Alberta off on this thing, and shamelessly. We got permission though, so it's all good. After we got permission. And then the training package too, a lot of the training package is mirrored, although it was created by Cal in isolation from it, arm's length from it. It really mirrors what happens in Alberta with what they call community peace officers. So that's complete, it's done. Sask Polytechnic is delivering the training in Regina starting on the 25th of February. That's the first course. So far have about 13 applicants for the course. There's still a few spots left if people are interested. I think I might have filled up a couple of spots in the last session there because it was our fault for missing somebody. But so there's still some spots left in the first training course. Subsequent training courses, the Deputy Minister has said he'd like to have them every year. And you know what that means, right? It means we're going to have one every year. But I'd like to have them much more often than that, at least in the initial stages of this program, is generate a lot of excitement and get a lot of people through and have more smaller courses. The first course is in Regina, but it doesn't have to be in Regina. If more of the demand is in Saskatoon or Prince Albert or Meadow Lake, then that's where we'll have the course. The next line says begin budgeting and recruiting. This is obviously a somewhat dated presentation. If you haven't started having a conversation already, haven't started talking about the budget and whether you're willing to spend money on it, you might be a little too late for the first course, which by no means means that you're too late for the program. How do we know it will work? Well, we have a proof of concept site in North Battleford City, and they're unique in a number of ways. They have a municipal contract with the RCMP. They're a community approaching 15,000 in population. So that makes them unique in a number of, it's 4 CSOs, and Albert Hedrick, who, it's one of these days he's going to hit me for using his name in public all the time, but it's always good. To call him gung-ho is an understatement. He is a charge ahead kind of a guy. He's their fire chief, and he's also in charge of the CSOs in North Battleford, and he has gone out and recruited. He's gone out and got uniforms. He's looking at dress uniforms. I don't expect that to happen. He's outfitted vehicles, but he had 100% support from council, from the mayor, from the administration, and from the citizens in North Battleford to do this. They all recognized they had a problem. They knew they needed to do something. They came up with a clear 3-stage plan, and this was one of the stages, and so they charging ahead. And so doing extremely well. Almost a bad place to have a proof of concept site. Yeah, it'll work, but boy, it sets the bar pretty high for everybody else. We've got a logic model in place, and specific metrics need to be created. So we, as the province, have a logic model, which is just a fancy way of saying we have a plan. What does success look like to us, is what that says, for the province, for the program. You need that locally. You you need an understanding of what success looks like to you and how you're going to get there and how you're going to measure whether you're successful or not. I'm going to require that of you. I'm going to make you tell me how your program was successful at some point. Just to keep you on task, just to keep you focused. That's what it's about, making sure that you're getting where you want to go. It's not just about enforcement. So we use the word enforcement, and when I use it here, I'm speaking about writing speeding tickets and writing parking tickets and writing dog tickets and overweight tickets, that kind of actual fine associated. That's what I mean when I say enforcement. And it's not all about enforcement. There's a need to be open to options as they present, which means you can't charge ahead with 88% of your day writing speeding tickets, because then you've got no time to adapt, you've got no time to change. And that's where you guys are head and shoulders above where we are in the province, and where the province is head and shoulders above the federal government is in being nimble, is being able to change on the fly, being able to adapt to rapidly changing situations. One of the things we see in North Battleford already is a statistically significant reduction in traffic violations from when the CSO program started. So in the first weeks of the CSO program, they wrote X number of violations or spoke to X number of people, and now it's X minus almost 20%, if I remember right from what I was looking at. So it's statistically significant. They have had an impact. And so now 20% of their day can be spent doing something else. Is the province nimble enough to come up with that? On turning on a dime? Yeah, maybe, but you guys sure are. So that's why you need to keep in mind it's not all about enforcement. It's about adapting to what today's problem is. It needs to include crime prevention and community involvement strategies. So and I'm getting ahead of myself a little, but your business case to us, your proposal to us to enter into the community safety program as communities, part of that says, what are you going to do for crime prevention and what are you going to do for community involvement? You're going to have to tell us what those look like to you. Education and outreach also needs to be a factor in that. There's some pamphlets up front here that someone graciously dropped off from North Battleford that are educational pamphlets. They're what the CSOs in North Battleford handed out basically for the first 3 months. All they did was have a conversation with people and hand them one of those things and then record what they did. So a lot of warnings. There was a lot of ticketing too, but they had been doing some municipal stuff for a long time as bylaw people. So now they simply had the added ability of being CSOs and having a provincial special constable appointment to go with that. So what goes in and what comes out? Well, what goes in are community input, ministry governance, that's me, that's the training program, that's the CSO policy, that's some guidance that we'll give you to help you keep yourself out of trouble. A cooperative evaluation, that's between you and the police and us and the police and you and us. We all cooperate to evaluate what makes a safer community. Make sure you understand what that is in your community. It's specific. It's not the same in every community. What's the process? The process is the municipality, a request from the municipality, which is a business case that includes enforcement priorities. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And what do you expect that goal to be? What do you expect that to give you as a community? You want the ability to write speeding tickets in your school zones with using the provincial statute. What do you expect that's going to get you versus a municipal bylaw versus nothing at all? Right? Approval under the CSO policy then as an authorized employer. So that's a policy consideration for us. We wanted the employers to be approved before the employees. We wanted the municipalities to know what they were getting into, to fully appreciate what it meant, what involvement there was, what the outcomes could be, and how much it was going to cost, and be in. It's a slow burn kind of a thing. Again, North Battleford, 4 guys off the hop right away. They had a pretty immediate change. They had a pretty immediate indication that it was working. With 1 or 2 in a smaller community, you're not going to have that kind of immediacy. You're going to have to be in it for the long run. You're not going to see it right away. So the MOU with the police of jurisdiction clearly outlines roles and responsibilities. You have to have some kind of an agreement with your detachment. I'll use detachment because most of you are dealing with the RCMP. But you have to have that understanding. This is a cooperative process. It's all about the continuum of policing, the continuum of enforcement from, I said last time, barking dogs to homicide, and everything in between, and who does what and why and how they complement each other. So we have a template for that. That template has a tremendous amount of input from the RCMP. It's bought into at the very highest levels of the RCMP in Saskatchewan. Brenda Butterworth-Carr has seen it and approves of it, the outline of it at least. So all of her managers do. And they do, and not only because they're told to, but because it makes good sense. So we'll give you that template as a community to then go to your detachment with. It won't be the other way. Right now what happens is the other way. So they come to you with their priorities and you try and fit your priorities in with theirs, right? It works, you can get some of them, and a lot of the ones that are provincial priorities or federal priorities or local priorities as well. This program is specific to addressing those things that don't fit, or don't fit consistently or constantly, that are priorities for you. Okay? And then you can hire someone. You probably have somebody in mind already, those that are interested now. You probably have a bylaw person that you're looking to enhance their training and enhance their ability to write tickets or to get involved in provincial statute stuff. And then we'll give you an appointment as them as individuals, a special constable appointment, assuming they meet all the criteria. So they'll have a limited number of provincial statutes that they can enforce. Traffic Safety Act is one that's obvious. Weights and measures stuff, that's another one that's common. ATV Act, Snowmobile Act, those are common as well. Liquor and Gaming Act, so they can deal with people with open beer in public, that kind of thing. You can make them dump their beer out. We're not arresting anybody. We're not having them enforce any of those liquor licensing regulations, that kind of stuff. That's not what they're there for. So those are the kinds of things. No increased criminal code ability. So they won't have enhanced powers of arrest, for example. They'll have the same powers of arrest that you and I have. No more than that. We're not giving them any more than that. We are giving them a better understanding of where that line is, what they can do and what they can't do, but we're not giving them any increased ability to arrest. The bottom line, this is what everybody wants to know. What does it cost and who's going to pay? I'll answer the second question first, and you already know the answer. You pay. As municipalities, remembering that there's only one ratepayer. So global good and all of those terrific arguments. And what will it cost? We're estimating, and this number is intended to shock you a little bit, but we're estimating about $125,000 per guy per year. That includes salary and benefits and vehicle and gas and tires and all of that kind of stuff that goes into it. Siren and police lights, the need for in-service training, the need for recertification and use of force and that kind of thing should all be included in that number. It could be a little bit higher than that in the first year, but that's because of some capital setups. You all understand that stuff better than I do. I'm a government weenie. I don't understand anything about capital stuff or accrual accounting. I know what it's called, that's all. Hey, that's it. That's my presentation in a nutshell. There's questions, and we'll do the questions after Tom does his presentation, then we can get together and answer some questions for you. It's a really exciting program for me. I'm very excited about it. It's long overdue. SUMA and SARM bought in 100%. The ministry's bought in. The RCMP's bought in. We've got some communities interested in charging ahead with their own plan. That's the key to this thing, is they're your staff, your priorities, your successes. So thank you.
All right, there we go. Well, first of all, I'd like to just briefly thank SUMA for having me come. It's good to be back. I haven't been here for about 5 years. I've had the opportunity to run into some familiar faces, had the opportunity to freeze, because again, it's always about -26 when the SUMA conference is on, I've noticed. So I'm going to get into my presentation. I've got a few different things I'm going to point out through the Stony Plain experience. Stony Plain started this program in 2002, 2003. And we've been doing it now for just over 10, 12 years, and we like to believe, and our community seems to feel that we're doing a pretty good job at it, but that wasn't always the case. On this first slide here, you'll notice that fudgicle. If any of you want to come to Stony Plain, I will make sure you get a fudgicle and a nice picture like that, and we'll put you in a presentation for next year. Since I am being recorded, there is the absolute greatest town council you will find anywhere in this great country of ours, Mayor William Choi and our council for the town of Stony Plain. I am going to speak a little bit about the governance aspect of the program and how we see that play out in our community. I'm also going to speak a little bit about the implementation. So there you can see some of our town staff doing the good work they do on a daily basis. At this point, I'm just going to, there's a couple more pictures of one of the parks in Stony Plain, a couple different parks there. What I wanted to do to start out, though, was I wanted to paint a bit of the picture about how this rolled out in Stony Plain the first time through. You know, Stony's been growing pretty fast for quite a while now. Back in 2001, 2002, it was about, 7,500, 8,000 people back then. And as that growth was hitting the community, the council and the council of the day felt it was important that we took a good look at this peace officer program. I'll refer to it as peace officers. That's the lingo we use on the other side of Lloydminster. So what happened with Stony Plain? We went through a little bit of the homework, did a little bit of the background. The program had been running there provincially for quite some time, and our council thought this would be a great idea. We put money in the budget for 2 peace officers. Passed the budget, flipped the switch, and got these 2 peace officers on the streets in Stony Plain. At the time, it seemed like a great idea. We thought it was going to be something that the community would embrace. Unfortunately, we didn't really do enough of our homework in advance. And again, with the hindsight being what it is, and it's long enough now that none of those smiling people I don't think were on council when this happened, but it really became pretty much a disaster. The peace officers we hired, kind of picked up our bylaw books, picked up some of the provincial statute stuff, and just went from, so to speak, theoretically, from one side of town to the other, just writing tickets and writing tickets and writing tickets. And obviously, when you go out into a community that hasn't had that, prior to that time, Stony Plain had a long-serving municipal bylaw officer. Very much a compliance kind of guy, tried to work with people, tried to talk to people, get them to understand the rules, so on and so forth. And when we flipped the switch into this program and brought the peace officers in, and I'm not discrediting those officers themselves, the direction wasn't really given, they really turned the community on its ear. And as you know, when you have something that goes substantially wrong in your community, it can sometimes take quite a while to get past that and to get past that history. So we had everything ranging from, tickets going out to everybody and anybody to the odd time where this person got a ticket, this person didn't. It was just a real challenge overall. So what I'm going to try to do over the next sort of 20 minutes is explain to you how we went about righting that ship and getting this program back to a spot where we're pretty proud of it. A little bit on Stony Plain. It's just over 100 years old. We had our centenary, I think it was 2005 or 6, I can't remember. It's about 18,000 people right now, growing pretty quick. 7 elected officials, like most of you in the room, about 130 plus staff members. We have 4 community peace officers and 1 municipal clerk. So for those of you that are familiar with the RCMP models, our municipal clerk in the peace officer program works solely for them. Answers the phone, handles the paperwork administrative side of the office, and in an effort to keep them out in the community as much as possible. If you're familiar at all with the locality, Stony Plain is about 3 kilometers from Spruce Grove. The city of Spruce Grove is about 30,000 people, and we do a lot of joint work together with them. Our RCMP detachment is an integrated unit. We have about 19. We have criminal analysts, some plainclothes, and other civilian members of the RCMP force there. Spruce Grove has about 24 or 25, and we both add 1 or 2 almost every year that goes by. So we do have a fairly substantial RCMP presence in our community. Spruce Grove as well has a peace officer program. I think they got about 7 or 8. So we've done quite a bit of this together with them over the years, but it's been something that's we've got a fair amount of experience in operating. And just because I know there's somebody from Humboldt in the room, Glenn Hall, the goalie from Chicago Blackhawks, is now a resident of Stony Plain. He lived in Humboldt. He grew up in Humboldt. So I see him from time to time. I always remind him there's a lot of good things that come from Humboldt and Stony Plain. When we get into the governance side of it, for the council members. These are the types of things that they spend their time on when it comes to our peace officer program. And this is something I would encourage, again, anybody that's looking to get into the program or get going on this service to take some time and go through this. This is the stuff that, frankly, Stony Plain didn't do the first time around back in 2002, 3, and 4. Take some time to understand your values, your community's values. I would expect most elected officials have a good understanding of what is important in their community and the values that your community holds dear. Take a bit of time to understand what success looks like. Try to picture what that looks like. I know sometimes you might think, well, if we can just get rid of these couple properties or do some more enforcement here or what have you, that'll be successful. But I would encourage you to think a little more than that or put a little more concentrated effort into it, because as we found out the hard way, there's more to it than that when you get these people into your communities and they start rolling around in the fully kitted out trucks and SUVs and so on. Take the time to work with your administration on how to get there, the map to that success, the business plan, the strat plan, whatever you want to call it. It's just to simply take the time to consider how you're going to get yourself to, what you've defined as your future success. And the fourth thing that's important, and we've found significantly important for us in Stony Plain, is the reporting that we do on this particular program. Again, it's a law enforcement type of program, and you need to be clear with your public just exactly what these people are doing out there in the community. So when our council sat down and defined success, what they felt would be success for Stony Plain and the community in this program, the first thing they came up with, sometimes tough to measure, but just that notion that the community feels safe, both on the personal side and the property side. I mentioned that this isn't necessarily maybe the easiest thing to track or to report on, but if as elected officials, when you're out in the community, I'm sure you can probably get a good gauge on your community of how people are feeling along that notion. Secondly, for our council was that this program was trusted, that our community understood and seen the individuals and the program as trustworthy, something that they felt was working on their behalf and was clear about what they were doing on their behalf. Thirdly, our council really wanted to make sure our CPOs are engaged in the community. We encourage them and mandate them to a certain extent to be out on the foot patrols in the parks so that people get used to seeing them and they're around. I know when in different schools, our community groups have scavenger hunts, so to speak, in Stony Plain. A picture with a CPO officer is always one that's on there. You'll see North Battleford, as I understand, is already well down that path, and it's an absolutely fundamental and important part of this program for it to be successful. And fourthly, as with most anything else, our council wanted to make sure that they could easily explain it. And again, I kind of poke fun at people like myself, not easily explained in a 30-page report to council or a 15-minute presentation, but in that sort of couple, 3 minutes when you might have somebody asking you questions at the hockey rink or in the park, that you can easily explain why and how and what these people are doing for the community. So from that notion of success, what then we sort of did, and we do on an ongoing basis, is we sat down. We have our peace officer program has its own sort of vision, mission, values statements. It's very closely linked to our overall town statements, but they do have their own. We needed to, and we continue to talk about the structure. You heard, I think, North Battleford report to Fire Chief, ours report to a General Manager of Community and Protective Services, and there's various ways you can do that. I think the important part is that you take the time to, give some thought as to how will it report. Will it be to the town manager? Is it to a committee of sorts, or what have you? But if you take the time and consider it, you should be able to come up with a good way to go about it for your community. The business plan, again, I think is mentioned and seems like it's mandatory or required. We do ours, it's a rolling 3-year. We review it every year, and we go really in depth every 3 years, or essentially on the council election cycle, so that any changes at that level or within the community we can easily adopt to. And that gets into as much detail as frankly you want it to be. I know ours, as the program's matured and evolved, it's gotten more and more detailed as we learn more and we understand more about how this works and how it works in our particular community. And again, you'll see this a few different times, reporting. Our council has set some pretty clear ideas about the reporting methods for our peace officer program. A little more on the structure side here. You give some thought to how many staff, whether that's one, whether it's North Battleford started out with 4, Stoney started out with 2 and moved up to 4, and I think we've got another one coming in a couple of years in our rolling 3-year plan to match the population growth. Again, the reporting structure is something that needs to be understood. And I've got down training and enforcement level. What we've found over the years is there's a standardized training mechanism that the province runs in Alberta. But above and beyond that, as our priorities change, as our objectives change, as well as laws change and so on and so forth, there's a fair amount of ongoing training that has to occur for these officers. We do a lot of training on mediation and de-escalating situations. Again, these are the people that are out there when someone's built a fence in the wrong place and they're mad, or the dogs are barking too long and too late at night and so on and so forth. They deal a lot with people, so we do a lot of soft skill training with them as well. And when you get into your business plan, here's a couple, 4 different things to keep in mind. Again, you'll see the same sort of tone running through from our values right through to our business planning, but you need to have defined objectives for your program. Again, what Stoney did wrong, I guess, the first time around was we didn't really do any of this. So these peace officers were hired, they kind of rolled into the community and just hit the streets, and again, it just did not go well. And they weren't really to blame. It was council and sort of that senior administration necessarily hadn't done some of the background work that probably needed to be done. You can talk about defining your operating philosophy. I'll make a couple comments about that in another slide. It's good to sit down, talk about your challenges and tasks. Again, this is sort of just business planning, but try to anticipate what some of the challenges they will face will be. And again, reporting, timelines, measurable data. If you can start that as soon as possible, then over the course of a year or 2 or 5, you'll have a pretty good set of information about your community. And when you're asked or you're told by someone, oh, there's so much more of this happening, you'll be able to go back and say, well, actually, no, it seems like it's leveled out or it's decreased or so on and so forth. So when we did our business plan, these are the 5 areas that kind of guide it, that our peace officers work under. So of course there's the municipal bylaw enforcement. That's the the work that in many communities your bylaw enforcement officers are doing right now. So there's still a fair amount of work that they do on that. Agency collaboration for us, again, we're in a rather tightly packed region with Spruce Grove and Parkland County right around us, so we do a lot of joint work, or we work with our partners on different things. That's also where our peace officers will be working with the RCMP. We're located right in their facility. Our officers are in the RCMP detachment, so they work quite closely with them. Health services from time to time, and just any other provincial agency, federal, wildlife, fish and game, those kinds of people. They do a fair amount of work with that. Third was, certainly a big one for us and for most communities on these ones in Alberta is the community education. Again, we do a lot of promotion about if there's a bylaw change, when we're going to start enforcing it. We do a lot of work on the community education. Our peace officers go into schools and help run the DARE programs and so on and so forth in our local schools to just be out in the community, get that trust level up there, and frankly get to know the community, because it's I think the RCMP will let you know as well that an effective way to keep a community safe is to certainly understand it and know it. So it's important for our officers to do that. Number 4 is what I think a lot of people in Saskatchewan and this program is looking towards too, is the the enforcement of the provincial statutes, so, that's speeding, stop signs, weights and measures were mentioned, a number of different provincial things that the peace officers can enforce. And number 5, just ongoing development. We want to make sure that we have absolutely well-trained people out on the streets doing this for us. We want to make sure that they're safe and that we lower whatever risks we can for them because, again, these aren't risk-free jobs. And accountability is the fifth one along there, that there's certainly some reporting and direct understanding both to their supervisors and ultimately to council about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So those are the 5 structure or the 5 main areas of our business plan, and that's what we generally report on as it's noted on this next slide. So again, reporting for us was a big deal. So we do quarterly reports. Those, by that I mean a written report gets submitted to council. They're presented in open council. It's a public report. So it's not, you can go on our website now and check our quarterly reports and you'll see 6 or 7 pages on peace officer stuff. And ours are detailed. They go right down to, there was X amount of tickets given out for nuisance vehicles and this much done for, again, barking dogs, this many speeding tickets, this much, photo radar too. But, so we do that every quarter. We do publish an annual report as well, and then certainly once you get into this, there's a provincial oversight that you're required to report on. So we make, when possible, we make those available as well. Now moving on to the, what we've experienced and what we do experience on an ongoing basis. Number one, the first thing that we've found and we've experienced is that it comes down to the people you have working for you on this. They need to, this is our own experience, they need to want to be a part of the community for it to be successful. They need to want to work with the community, especially for our council. They need to want to look at compliance and being engaged with the community. And as well, the enforcement comes up for sure too. But we've really found that it's our individual officers themselves that really are the success of this program. And to be straight and to be blunt with you, if one's not working out, then they're not working out, and we make some changes there because it's too important of a program that trust can be challenged or pushed aside so fast if we have an officer out there that's not really following our value statements. On the compliance side, I was going to talk a little bit about this because this was another big thing for our council. And again, some of it might just be from the history in Stony Plain, but we often do a lot of work in advance if we're changing any of our municipal bylaws and any of the regulations contained within them to ensure that the council or the community understands why we're doing it and how. And then we usually put in some form of, whether it's 3 or 6 months phase in before we actually start enforcing on any of our new stuff. The reason we do that, again, is because most people are compliant and most people do follow the rules. You have to explain them to them and how they work and what the rules are really in place for. But once they understand that, most people do that. So we do a lot with the warnings, explanations, phase in. That goes back to that community education that was, that was and still is so significant to our council and frankly to our community. They don't mind following the rules we have if they understand why, which again is a bit. This is our first step at it. Certainly we do a lot of enforcement as well, but our peace officers do follow that sort of value statement that we're going to try to get people to understand and follow the rules before we start just shooting the tickets out the door and towing cars and so on and so forth. But when you do get into enforcement, the other thing that we found, and I think is something to bear in mind when you go from some of the, maybe a little bit softer municipal bylaw enforcement to the peace officer program, you need to make sure your regulations are extremely clear. You need to make sure that you have you will be called into question. You will be taken to, we go to court. I think that's coming up on another slide, but on the provincial stuff, we're in court quite a bit. So your peace officers need to know, and they'll get that training, but you need to make sure that I mean, it's followed up on and everything's understood, that all of these things can be withheld or upheld in a court of law, because as you get challenged from time to time on your municipal bylaws, we've seen an uptick in the challenges we've received over the last few years, and it just illustrates the need to make sure all of your bylaws are reread and rewritten if necessary to make sure that they will stand the test in a courtroom. We do all of that compliance and then some of this enforcement, because the truth is we do have difficult residents. They are in our community, and I'm sure they're in every community. There's a few people that just don't want to follow the rules, don't understand them, but simply don't want to follow them anyway. And we do all of this because I like to say I like to get rid of number 4, because I'm sure, like most elected officials, you'll get the odd phone call about your bylaw enforcement did this, or I know we get them from the CPO, your CPOs did this and I don't like it. So we try to make sure our councillors are up to speed and understand, going back to the beginning of the presentation, that they really have a driving the bus on the governance side, so that we can eliminate that, or that if those calls are coming into our elected officials, that they understand the program and they can easily explain it. I was going to do a little bit on the number side of it, and a little bit on the priorities. It was mentioned a bit in the first presentation, but what I found over the years, certainly the RCMP do a great job at what they do. We certainly owe a lot of respect and thanks to them for the efforts they put in, but again, part of that truth is that they also follow the national, provincial priorities as laid out by their leadership. As some of you will recall too, a few years ago, they will also be out of your community in the event of the Olympics or G7s or G20s. They'll be pulled out and you're not really necessarily asked, but they're off. With us in Stony Plain anyway, the CPO program, our priorities alone, whether that's coming from the community, from council, or a mix thereof, the biggest benefit for us is that they are able to address that. If, we see a bunch of graffiti popping up over a span of a month or so, boom, they can get on it right away. Like I said, a little more nimble than sometimes at the federal, provincial level, and we can make those sort of objective switches pretty quick, which our council appreciates as well as our community. I got some numbers up there. They're, I wouldn't say they're accurate to the penny, but that's roughly what we're paying for RC per officer in Stony Plain right now. That's just wage benefit costs. You'll see the next line there is that's what we pay for CPO officers in Stony Plain. Again, that's just wage benefit. And then in the number 5 there, that's the revenue that comes in on our CPO side through different fines and different regulations. So you can see I threw this on there just as sort of a order of magnitude type number. You'll see that at the end of the day, just per officer costs, ours are anywhere from 2/3 to a half. Although I was going to make mention quickly on something, because we got a few questions about this in the last time. Just for clarity, and certainly from the town of Stony Plain perspective, my council, we didn't move into the peace officer program as a way to necessarily reduce our RCMP costs. Our council chose to move into it and continues to be in it because they see it as a increase to the ability to keep our community safe and the people in the community safe. I know we got some questions about that, and I just thought I might as well clear that up right away. We don't necessarily, even when we do our budgeting or when we do our 3-year business plans and strat plans and whatnot, we don't see it as one or the other. We know that we have to fund the RCMP to the level that council and the community, collectively will expect, but we don't make that cross comparison. We fund the peace officers as we see on their own mandate, and we don't necessarily cross them over in our minds. A couple of quick ones here. Something I noticed when I went out to Stony Plain when I left Humboldt, that was my first experience with the peace officer program. And I can tell you the first thing I picked up on was the increased complexity and the risk that this program has. You start getting involved with the provincial government on their statutes and whatnot, you have to have a better understanding of how those work, because eventually you're going to have to explain it to somebody. That takes a little more time. And certainly the risk. Again, by some of the work that the peace officers are capable of doing, They are put in a different type of risk than your historical bylaw enforcement officers. They are, I know for us, they are able to pull people over. They are able to run plates and find out who's in vehicles and somewhat like that, so on and so forth. So there is a fair amount, or not a fair amount, there is an increased risk when you take on a program like this. Number two, and this is the one that Stoney stumbled on back in the early 2000s, was the level of change that it actually brought forward in our community. I don't think it was that the level of change and the way the community saw it, the change that they saw, was something that was really anticipated. The third one I note, just as a professionalized service, once they're, through the training that the province offers, once they, we get a fair amount, ours are constantly in training, they become a very professionalized service. And I think we maybe had a question about this in the last time too. Your peace officers will tell you very clearly if they can or cannot do something. I know ours will. And, in our real world, sometimes, it might be the city manager or the mayor or the council wants something done. And the peace officer will say, no, we don't do that. We cannot go into that jurisdiction. We do not do that. So, in the real world, I would expect to hear that from time to time in any program that along these lines. The fourth thing, when you get into the provincial stuff, you start getting challenged on some of those tickets. You do get called to court more often. We find we're in court more often for the provincial stuff than we are for our own municipal stuff. And again, that can be a bit of a time constraint, as you understand in some of the justice system, you can be in there for it, then it gets put off for 2 weeks, then a month later, so on and so forth. So there's a specific time constraint that comes along with the provincial side. Here's the opportunities that we've found that we feel is a real right step for us in Stony Plain. Anyway, we can adjust our own priorities, as I mentioned. We can, on our own, define and set the service level. If we want 2 CPOs, do we want 5? Do we want 10? What do we want them to be doing? How do we want them to be trained on anything over and above the provincial stuff that's mandatory? But we're able to decide that. You're able to grow and develop the service. It's entirely in your hands. You can model it however you want. You can learn from your own mistakes and keep making it better. And fourthly, you're able to control your costs just by defining and setting the service level. So those are some of the real opportunities that we see and that we have seen over the years. So the quick summary for council at a governance level: define your values, give some thought to what your success would look like in the future with a program like this. Take the time to create that business plan, however detailed it needs to be for your own operation, but take the time to do it, and make sure you're reporting openly. That's probably the single most thing that we get questioned on. And it's nice when we get those calls or those emails, we get to say, oh yeah, I was just reported to council, here you go, I'll send it to you right now. We will, everything that goes to council, we will send to, Joe taxpayer, they'll get the exact same reports, and it certainly helps increase that trust level that was important to our council. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Hugh. We're now going to open up for questions and answers, and I'm going to remind you the session is being recorded, so I do need you to step to the microphone in the center aisle. Please identify yourself by name and municipality, and then if you want to direct the question to one of specifically Tom or Hugh, that's fine, or leave it open-ended, and then they can decide between themselves who's going to answer it.
Okay. Thank you, Mark Twite, City of Prince Albert. This can just go to the panel. You just touched on it a little bit. On the, with being able to, what they're able to do, and just a red flag come up that if they're going to be pulling over cars, say, and I don't know, there's a kilo of coke in there or something like that. I'm just thinking about safety. Like, how are they, what do they have? I'm guessing they don't have a gun, so pepper spray, tasers? No. So, okay. So how do you go about that? Like, I'm totally in favor. I think every city's trying to get the best bang we can out of our bylaw and different things like that. But that was just a red flag, and maybe you can, I'll step down and you could maybe just say what some of their safety concerns would be in training. Thank you.
I will say that risk management is a big part of what we discussed with SUMA and SARM at the table. SUMA and SARM both brought it It came from communities. It comes from within. The RCMP had the same things to say. One of the costs, and I guess I didn't mention it in the presentation, that we expect, part of that 125 a year, is that there's some kind of a dispatch service. There's some kind of backup system in place, radio communication back to a dispatch service. The PA 911 Center, ECC in Prince Albert, is by far the best service, in my opinion. There are private ones available, but the PA 911 Center has the ability to share CPIC information, but they can't share it with CSOs yet. We're trying to get the CSO program approved under a very complex federal policy to be able to receive CPIC information. That's not going to happen quickly. So that's a risk. It's something that's in our mind. And it's something that we just talked about in the office the other day. And it cost me a little bit of sleep, I have to be honest, when I think about the program and I think about the CSOs out there pulling over a vehicle. You know, it's not Detroit, but neither is Kelowna or Kamloops or just outside of Edmonton here more recently. So it's a risk. It's something that has to be considered. We'll have the ability to pull over a vehicle, yes. They'll have the ability to call whatever dispatch center. In the ECC case, they can get registered owner information on that vehicle and say, yep, that plate looks like a black Dodge Ram, we're good. Or it's supposed to be a black Dodge Ram and it's a green Toyota. Well, okay, we're not pulling this guy over anymore. We're calling the police. So yeah, it's a risk. It's something that needs to be balanced. It's something that's going to be key in the training to teach them when to say no. And they're going to say no to you as government and say, nope, not in my comfort zone, not something I'm allowed to do legally, not something I'm trained for. I'm hoping that they're going to tell you that. That's a speaking truth to power kind of a thing that I hope that they will employ. But also saying no to a situation. They have to be able to say no and disengage and get themselves out of harm before they get into it. They'll have some tools, some abilities, pepper spray, baton, their mind, their use of force training, defensive tactics training, verbal judo, all of those kinds of things that they'll be able to use to get themselves out if they get in it. I would prefer they didn't get into it at all. But it cost me sleep, no doubt about it. But it's important to communities to be in this. It's important to the province to be in this. We all just have to be pragmatic about what it is we're in it for, and not getting ourselves into jeopardy for the sake of a parking ticket or a dog ticket or a parking your trailer over the sidewalk ticket, right? Remember what we're trying to do.
Hi, I'm from the town of Creighton.
Sorry, I'm just going to let Tom answer.
Oh, okay.
I just add quickly to that. I think too, again, our peace officers can pull people over and they can run plates and everything like that. So this is where that training comes into it. But it is a part of that increased risk and understanding that you have to have when you get into this program. The other thing I would tie that back to, I mean, our overall town, mission vision stuff, has a lot to do with employee safety. And that, that's different for a public works staff or a town manager or director of finance, but it's very much different here. And that's where it comes down to the values that we do talk to our staff about, that they feel that they can do exactly that. We're not sure we can handle this, we're just walking away. If they really understand that that's one of the values of the organization, they won't ever feel pressured, or I would hope they would never feel pressured to do something that they don't feel safe doing.
I was just wondering if we're in northern Saskatchewan, right on the border. Would there be any provisions with sharing regional? Like if there's 3 communities in a row, could we share those officers regionally? And is there a problem crossing the border?
I think yes, no, yes is the answer to your question. Regional is a problem for us, not because we don't want to do it, but because we're not allowed to do it. The legislation doesn't allow it. The legislation says they have to be employed by a municipality, not by a group of municipalities. And it also says that you need to be clearly identified as your area of jurisdiction on your vehicle and on your person as special constables. So that means if you work for the town of Rosetown, you can't go to the town of Elrose. If you work for the city of Regina, you can't go to the city of Weyburn. So without changing vehicles, changing markings, that kind of thing. Now, I guess, Sean, where are you? Sean told me that last time I wasn't clear about this, so I'll try and be more clear. You may use the same individual, but you have to apply for the program as individual communities, and you have to have your own stuff. So they have to be clearly marked, uniform, shoulder flashes, whatever, as being your community, and they have to be marked on the vehicle as that community. Now, magnetic signs are fine. There's some magnetic signs for bylaw officers, but you have to change it every time you change communities. So crossing borders is a problem. We're aware of it. We don't love it. You guys don't love it. SARM doesn't love it, so we're going to try and change it. But you guys, as was mentioned a couple of times already, are pretty nimble. If you want to change a bylaw, you change a bylaw. It takes you a month. If we want to change an act, it takes us 2 years at minimum to open that act and make changes. And a whole bunch of things have to stack up before that. So we're out 3-4 years before we can make a change to an act, and in this case, the Police Act, and it's several changes, as well as the Municipalities Act, more than one change in order to pull that off. Are we going to try? Absolutely, we're going to try. It's not going to happen quickly, but we're definitely going to try.
Thank you. And Miss, could I just get you to tell us your community name and your names so when people are listening to the recording later?
Okay, I'm from the town of Creighton, and it's up northeast Saskatchewan, and the concern is we're right on the border
Right.
with Funflaw, Manitoba.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the floor? Wow. Yep, we have a gentleman coming. I don't want to let you out too early today. Where are you from, sir? And your
I am
name?
from Kalonzi. It's a small town, about 500 people, just 40 kilometers, 55 kilometers or so down the 16 highway.
Thank you.
And we have, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting, but for a community our size, it's not that interesting because it's not designed at the present time for the small community. And then that, your example of can we share, very good question and a very good answer, because I was thinking, maybe we can get along with our neighbors, and because we've had bylaw enforcement and it doesn't really come across the way we'd like it. And we've had, I don't know if the word invisibility of the RCMP for our small communities, but I think that's turning around a bit because they have more officers in our area. And visibility is really good when you have a bunch of contractors in the area. Even if there's nothing going on, at least they know there's something around the corner. So that's my, I don't have a question, I just have an observation that I think this resurrecting the town police officer scenario that used to be years and years ago is the right way to go if you want to have more than one layer of enforcement and education to the community. And that's the way to go. It's just the little people out there. We're still going to be in the wings a little longer, I think, but that's the way it is. So, but keep it up, because sooner or later you're going to get to us.
Thanks. It's encouraging to hear that your understanding, I guess, about it. The size of the community is important. The impact on the size of the community also important. SUMA and SARM were both at the table the whole time when we designed this, so all of your views are there already. I say that when you talk about bylaw, Crystal was here for the last session. Crystal Strong is with Samio, now they call it, and they're developing their own program to professionalize bylaw officers. A 3-stage training program, which I think is excellent, and it's not some work that's happened in the past with regard to special constables in Saskatchewan or with regard to bylaw officers. So that's always an option to you. You can share bylaw officers amongst your neighbors, but not special constable appointments, not the way the legislation is currently written. So there was a couple of things, and I'm going to go off topic now, and I hope I answered or addressed your concern. Tom mentioned that the CSOs are in the detachment. And that's a very unique situation, and you won't see that happen here in Saskatchewan. You won't see them in the detachment with the RCMP. They'll have to have their own office space, their own area. I want them to work cooperatively with the RCMP, police of jurisdiction. In the case of the municipal police services, Prince Albert is in the room. Yeah, you could very well work out of the same building. There needs to be some segregation there, though. Remember I said about CPIC information, and the feds are very particular about who sees it or hears it. I'm not allowed to hear it, even though I work in policing for the Ministry of Justice. So that's, you know, they're particular about that, and so sharing space would lead to that. Hopefully in the long term they'll have CPIC authority, and so they'll be able to hear it, but you still won't see them in the detachments here. A little bit of a wisecrack about calls to the counselors. You guys will get calls, and you need to have a process to look after them, because if you don't, then guess who they call next? They call my minister, and things gain a tremendous amount of velocity between them and me. So keep me out of it, would you? SARM has a wage scale. If you're interested in, they've developed they did a compensation study. Sean was involved in that too, which is just a suggestion. We're not telling people what they have to pay, neither are SUMA and SARM, but it gives you an idea what the rest of the world is paying. I think that Tom pays a little bit better than we're suggesting, but not a tremendous amount better, remembering also that you're in your own competitive market, and what's competitive in Kalanze may not be in Estevan. That's it. That's all I got, my comments. Any more questions? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ray Sadler from the town of Bigger, and so I'm thinking now the government, and I shouldn't just say governments, because governments help everybody, and so does the police services. Now we've gotten into the new bylaws. We call them new because now we're enforcing people that put motorhomes in front of their houses. There's always going to be dogs and cats, and there's always going to be things like we now have the new municipal recycling program. We also have landfill laws now that we're working on. What I'm looking at is that how is the information, how can we get more information that this program, like the other day we looked at the new, the ideas for maybe dog and cats. So we look at the city of Saskatoon with their licensing and things like that. What kind of dogs might be dangerous, what may not be dangerous. So I think what we need, and instead of just instigating the officer, is maybe a little bit more trickled information that this is a necessary way to make Saskatchewan a safer place for all the residents. And these bylaws and these officers aren't just there to police more, but more to the regulation of making your life in your community safer. So I don't know, you know, there's a way we could do this. This is a great idea, but the whole idea is to pass it on to your general public without saying we're going to beat you with a stick until you understand. And I feel sometimes when we do that, unless the information is, you know, and you don't know and I'm telling you what to do, isn't always such a good idea. But it's a great idea, so maybe a little bit more things coming maybe from the government side to the people, more information maybe through the MLA. My MLA is Mr. Randy Weeks. He does lots of work in my community, even with Kelly Block, my member of parliament. Maybe more things down the tube that way, maybe more meetings at the town hall are necessary, maybe more funding to make those meetings happening. I guess I ask a lot of things, particularly money, so thank you.
And thank you for those comments, and actually they've been noted by Hugh, and as well I see some heads nodding from the SUMA Board of Director members and staff that are here to also see what we could be doing with some communication strategies through SUMA's channel, so thank you for that. Any more questions or comments? Yes, sir.
My name is John Dewick. I'm a councillor of Town Lanigan. I remember when I was 55, there was something about the RCMP had some special constables that could do some training alongside the RCMP. Is there something like that?
There's a couple of programs the RCMP has, the auxiliary members, which are volunteers, and there's a new program, community special constables with the RCMP. They're very specific, more targeted at First Nations communities than at small towns at the moment, But again, remembering how nimble you are and how not nimble I am with the province, trying to amplify that by 8 or 10 for the feds. So they don't react very quickly. They get a really great idea every once in a while. And please don't tell them I said that or they'll get big heads. They get great ideas. Yeah, I'm on tape again. I did it again. But it takes them a long time to pull that stuff off, so you really can't count on that in the short term anyway. But as far as cooperative training, the RCMP are reluctant to get into the area of training special constables or working with them in a training environment. And that's a national decision, not a local one. Locally seems easy, but again, you're dealing with a national police force, so no, that's not likely to happen. But we do envision and already experience joint operations where they'll work with the RCMP and with the highway traffic guys on a roadside stop for weights or for a variety of things, the impaired driving stuff. So the CSOs will be able to direct traffic for that, work together, and they'll be seen there with the police and recognize a little bit of your comment about where do they fit and how do we know who they are and what they do. And hopefully they'll look very similar across the province as well in terms of branding, something we've also talked about. So does that help you? Yep. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jamie Martins. I'm a counselor in Martinsville. With this gentleman's comment about auxiliary constables, I was an auxiliary constable for 6 years and in law enforcement for 18 years altogether. And so I've come from the area where I've only carried OC spray and a baton to a sidearm. But I was just wondering about the program, about the, I guess, the credentials that you were looking for in an officer, and as well about the training, the length of training, and that you would.
And gentlemen, I'll get both of you to answer this because yours might be slightly different for Stony Plain.
Our training is 6 weeks long. The first course, again, starts in February. It's 4 weeks in class and 2 weeks at home doing Police Knowledge Network courses, the online courses. They're canned courses from basically from the Canadian Police College. They'll have OC spray and baton and defensive tactics training in their training, and they'll have to recertify on that stuff. What was your other question? I have an excellent memory. It's just super short.
And the credentials.
The credentials.
Yes.
I have a package here that will help with that, but really it's be of good character and judgment, just like the Police Act says. We want you to not be actively involved in any criminal investigations. You're subject to a criminal code check by the ministry. So I'll take a look at somebody that you know, got some petty crime as an 18-year-old and now they're 45 and there's nothing in between. Well, we're probably okay with that. But they're subject to that criminal code check, grade 12, 8, 19 years old, that kind of thing. Because it could be one of the statutes that we've given in the past anyway is liquor and gaming, so they can pour out somebody's beer and that kind of thing. So they're in touch with that. Not so they're doing liquor regulations per se, but so that's why they need to be 19. But it's not a tremendous amount. We're not getting a lot of 20-year-olds. We're getting a lot of 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and maybe even one or two that are a little older than that. But those are second career, supplemental career, those kinds of people that are attracted to this program. It's very much a community policing kind of a program. To coin something you're probably used to, community policing. This is very much what we're about, solving problems, as opposed to banging people on the head with a ticket. It's about. Remember, I said it's not about enforcement. Not all about enforcement. Sometimes it's about compliance, as Tom said. Compliance is different. Compliance is telling people a story and getting them to go, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'll move my trailer. Writing them a ticket doesn't necessarily have that result all of the time, right? Does that help?
Yes.
For our peace officers, there's a very similar provincial training program that they must have. It's an accreditation program. But what we've noticed over the last, anyway, sort of 5-7 years, our peace officers tend to, the oldest one's probably 35, if that. You know, they tend to be in that, 25 to 35, and a lot of them, well, not a lot, I know 2 of ours were previously auxiliary officers with EPS, like the Edmonton Police Service. So some of them are, being enforcement focused and have taken a number of different training courses that are available, whether it's private college type thing or what have you. So we see them coming in when they apply. We just hired one not too long ago. When we get the applications in, they often have a whole bunch more than just what's required when they're walking through our doors to begin with, though.
And is the program that you run for the training, is it similar to like the security operations or CAPS program like they used to do in Alberta? Or?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to say that our induction training program is exactly that. It's an induction program. It's a basic training course. And so there's no radar training. There's no weigh scale training. So you'd have to get those supplementally. In-service training is what they call that in the police world, everywhere else too, I'm sure. But there's be a fair amount of in-service training that will need to take place. This is very much a basic training course.
You can certainly tell who the administrator was up here. There was no hesitation to say, I don't know. I'm not sure that would be the same for the political people. Any more questions from the floor?
Thank you very much. Ken Baker, City of Lloydminster, Lloydminster, Alberta, Saskatchewan. We're in the process of looking at the Peace Officer Stroke Safety Officer program as we speak. And you talked about crossing borders. We have photo radar in the city on one side of the border, and we can't use it on the other side of the border. Of course, that's been a 100-year story, that under our charter, we sometimes don't know what we can do because we can never get provincial governments together to deal with those kinds of issues. But under this particular act...
Ditto.
Pardon me?
I said ditto, because we're on...
Oh, ditto. I'm sorry. Okay, ditto. I'm sorry, dear. My question is, would that be considered, I don't need an answer today, but something that's going to come up very soon. Would that be considered crossing borders in terms of jurisdictions? The City of Lloydminster is one government running one municipality, but crossing a border called the Fourth Meridian. And that's something that just came to light in your discussion today. Thank you.
We've designed a pet collar that gives them a little buzz when they cross the border in Creighton and Lloydminster, so we're good. It'll be uniform. I'm kidding, of course. We have considered it. Onion Lake is talking to us about being involved in the program. And of course, they have land on both sides of the border. And really, it'll be a cooperative program. I'm very much looking forward to having a request come from Lloydminster / the province of Alberta to say, could you please mirror a special constable appointment in Saskatchewan from the Alberta appointment. And I suspect what you should do is probably pick one, say we're going to be part of the CPO program or the CSO program, and then ask the other province to complement. And based on your beautiful new detachment in Lloydminster, which I've been to and is marvelous, compared to the old one, compared to anyone, so it's a very nice building. Being on the Alberta side and K Division Edmonton managing your police. Not to push you in there any direction, but I think the answer to that question is obvious. And I very much look forward to getting a request to say, help us out. And we're willing to do that, I'm sure. I mean, it's the minister that signs these things, and I don't speak for her, but I am all over it. I'll push it up the line. I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together. Because there are other communities that are close. All of the borders are bordered by RMs who are also in this program, so it's definitely going to come up. So good question. Thanks very much.
And just FYI, we don't use the word photo radar in Saskatoon. It's automated speed enforcement. The citizens aren't sure what we're talking about, so they don't know to be angry yet. Any more questions from the floor? We're getting you out a little bit early. I have an extra 10 minutes. Any closing comments, gentlemen? Hugh, yes? Go ahead.
I'm vastly more popular than I expected to be, so I'm down to my last business card. But I have a little package here it's an excerpt from our CSO policy document that deals specifically with the community's responsibility when it comes to what you need to do to become an authorized employer of community safety officers. I'm willing to share that. As I said, I'm down to my last, I might be able to dig a couple more out of my briefcase, but my last couple of business cards. But you're welcome to come up and grab those for me on the way out. I'll stick around for a few minutes after if you have personal questions, or I'm not going to answer them, but if you have any questions you'd like to direct at me, I'm happy to. How did I stay married for 29 years? It's about choices. It's about choices.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting you out 10 minutes early, so that means I have 10 minutes to Google something that Jamie Martins, councillor of Martinsville, just put into my mind. I'm going to be looking for a community called Hillsville, where I could be the councillor of that. Tom and Hugh, on behalf of the SUMA delegates and the board of directors, thank you very much. I know that it was a very informative session for everybody. Both gentlemen will be available for questions afterwards. The recording will be available February 16th on the SUMA website if you want to review the presentations and the comments. And gentlemen, on behalf of SUMA, we have made a donation in each of your names to the Mike Badham Scholarship Fund, so please join me in thanking Tom and Hugh as well. That's it. Thank you very much. Sorry. No, it's Regina's and the mayor told me for her favor. I said, no, I'm going to wear that white bar instead. I said, here.
I can find that out for you. Send me a picture. I'll ask the real smart people back in my office that know.
Security operations course in
Oh, yeah.
downtown Edmonton
Oh, okay.
as a trial.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where like a lot of ours are coming up with all kinds of money. And then they just go through I think they even accelerate if they have different law enforcement categories, will accelerate through the bridging program, and then it's like 3 weeks or something. It takes a while for them to get all the formal approvals. We just hired one. It was about 4 months until he was actually approved to be able to roll out this program.
I haven't heard any negative feedback on your program yet. My daughter lives near there.
Oh, does she? Oh, good.
Yeah, Northeast Saskatchewan. Yeah. Went there for employment and she's really enjoying the community. So. Last business card, sorry.
It's a great program. It's just the only unfortunate part is
thank you.
Simply, horses, I know, and it's terrible in our area. We're covered by casualty. Communities under the jurisdiction. They've got a guy that just was transferred, they got one that's on sick leave. Hell, we see an officer and he might be a minimum, very frustrating as a community leader and a business owner when I've suffered from acts of crime and I'm told by a police officer that they can't afford to dedicate that time to that investigation. The one time we had a crime spree through Northeast Saskatchewan, it was 72 cases of break-and-enters along Highway 55, and you told that they couldn't dedicate that type of man hours. Well, excuse me, but all of us suffer a lot of property loss and personal loss. Like, we got hit hard. All the stars are aligned as one stupid reason or another. We have a large amount of casualties. Gone. I spent all night pre-shot using my tools to break the door off the safe and steal the cash. And absolutely no leads, and we had one lead that I thought we should have pursued was one of the other businesses in town had a laptop store. And it was, they continued the Wi-Fi service to it, and it was active. Well, what are the better facilities? They wouldn't pursue it. They wouldn't use any kind of equipment to pursue it, to pinpoint it. And that angered a lot of people, because you turn around and heaven forbids if you had your cell phone near your ear when you were pulling out of your driveway, they're going to nail you for that one, or if you rolled through that stop sign. But they couldn't investigate a criminal, that affected the entire community. Do the stuff that yes, exactly. Try to get some correlation, try to figure out, I would like to get the guidance. Or have the time to dedicate it. Yeah, exactly. You would never know about that correlation. Yeah. Well, nice to meet you.
Tom, I was going to tell you one thing. This is nothing business. Good presentation. You just brought in Glenn Hall.
Oh, yeah?
Chuck's wife.
Yeah.
My mother were married and two daughters. Glenn Hall and
Oh, yeah.
place was dead. He looked after my two sisters. Somewhere there, but she was.
We were
always.
Yeah.
care, thanks.